This is Retrospective Facilitation, a podcast for facilitators that want to make their retrospectives even more effective. This is the first of a series of special episodes where I interview former military war veterans now working in tech-related industries and reflect on their wartime debriefing experiences and similarities with agile retrospectives. Some teams often skip retrospectives, but what happens when you skip a debriefing in a war zone? In this episode, I speak with Jon Hawkins, a United States Marine Corps war veteran, now Chief Marketing Officer at Customer.io, and reflect about similarities between retrospective and military debriefings. Yeah, so Jon, maybe if you want to introduce yourself and mention to the audience what you were doing for the Marine Corps and when you were deployed, and also what you're doing today.
Yeah, for sure. So my name's Jon Hawkins. I'm currently the Chief Marketing Officer at a software company called Customer.io. And a long time ago, in 2002-ish, I was much younger and joined the Marines. And in the Marines, my job was to operate and repair and make sure that they stay ready. Operate, repair tanks, and particularly these are amphibious tanks called Amtracs. And so by the time I got out of the Marines after 4 years, I was a sergeant, and most times, a whole platoon of tanks were my responsibility. So it was up to me to make sure that while we're in the field, while we were deployed, wherever we were, we maintained 100% readiness, and those vehicles were ready to shoot, move, and communicate. Those are the main three things there. But yeah, the first thing that comes to mind about the Marine Corps was communication, and the ability to communicate was everything. And so you're talking about retrospectives and debriefings. I'm just saying this because I think it's just this underlying thread that every Marine knows, no matter if they're a rifleman or they're in a tank or whatever, that their ability to communicate with each other at peacetime, but more importantly on the battlefield, is everything. If we can't hear each other, we don't know intelligence or what's going on, then everything stops, the mission stops. And so one interesting thing that I remember from the Marine Corps is that with the communication aspect, there could be three things that would stop. My role in the Marine Corps was the maintenance chief and a crewman for this amphibious tank. And we'd usually roll in groups of 3 to 4 at a time, or 3 to 4 tanks together across different parts of the country. And there's a few things that could disable the tank, internally. What we would do is we would say, if the engine's not running or mechanically it's not working, that would disable it. For our particular tank, since it was amphibious, if there was a compromised hull or it would leak, that would disable it. And then the third thing was really funny. I never understood it until later on, actually until going to Iraq, but it was communication. If the radio systems were down, could not move. We would not take it into combat, no matter how much we needed that vehicle. So communication is just this inherent part of the Marine Corps. On a more individual basis, every Marine, doesn't matter if they're most junior or the most senior, knows what it means to pass word, is what they call it, just passing word. And so it's such a meme in the Marine Corps that people make t-shirts, their PT shirts or their green exercise shirts that we wear when we exercise in the morning. And the words, usually they'll say your unit, your battalion, and your insignia on it to show pride of your unit, within the Marines. But a lot of times people make goofy shirts or whatever, and they'll say it's got word, a play on got milk, And got word is basically the same thing. It's saying at multiple times during the day, the more senior Marines, enlisted and officer, will always take time to stop and make a formation and talk to the more junior Marines and say, this is what we know, this is what's going on, this is the plan of the day. And so there's never a time in the Marine Corps where you don't know what you're doing for that day, even if what you're doing is nothing. You're just if you're waiting for aircraft to land to pick you up, then we are standing by to stand by, or we better hurry up, get to this spot so we can wait all day, or wait for 2 days to get picked up or whatever. So people always know what's going on, and communication is just that underlying thread. And I think that when it comes to debriefing, it's just exactly the same thing. It's just this expected thing. You would never, ever, ever do a single thing in the Marines without some sort of what we used to call a school circle at the end. And so a lot of times you'll see the most senior Marines, gunnery sergeants, first or second lieutenants, maybe company commanders, captains, things like that. Very common word they'll say, school circle on me. And that basically means no formation, no nice neat squares of people standing in rows and columns, but it means just like in a complete cluster, just run over and make a C shape around me so I can tell you the word. And a lot of times when we were passing information in the beginning of the day or before an event or a mission, it would be in a formation. And a lot of times when it's a little bit less formal, maybe it was like, outside of garrison in the battlefield, not back on base, it would be more of a school circle because people are a little bit more emotional. Well, Marines aren't that emotional, but like they're a little bit more, they're just in a different spot. So a lot of times I remember the debriefing aspect of communication in the Marine Corps being in the form of a school circle. And I remember from the most insignificant things to the most just heartbreaking things. And so I'm not sure. Yeah. What would be the best way to talk about that? Like, are you bringing this in context against, like retrospectives and why they're important and like, why do we choose to skip them all the time? Things like that, or?
Yeah. So I was just like thinking when you mentioned that school circle, at that point, I imagine like this officer to ask information, right? You want to make sure everyone is on the same page on what happened, and how does that usually go? So is the maybe someone thought that, oh, I should have done this thing instead I did that thing. Is there blame going on? How is that going, and what is the outcome of this circle of these debriefings?
Yeah. I get what you're saying. So I think the accountability is something that like Marines pride themselves on. So if someone makes a mistake, and it's, I guess it depends on the situation. The context really matters. If it's there's two states. There's in garrison, which is like when you're back on base. Probably won't talk about that as much because it's not as authentic. When you're in a combat area, it's very, very different. And I think that when you're in a combat area, there's not as much blame or accountability for actions that we take in those scenarios because no one can. It's like trying to predict which way the wind will blow. You can't have complete control or accountability in a combat zone. You do the best you can under the pressure you're under. So I think a lot of times in forward deployed areas, in areas like Iraq, our retrospectives or debriefings would be mostly about acknowledging what happened, just because you never want to assume that that certain folks have the same picture and perspective that you do. In a lot of cases, with Marines, if they're engaged in some sort of fight, they may not have any idea what happened on the other side of the town or the other side of the hill or the valley or whatever. And so debriefing is helpful in that case, to just understand how how the battle went on or the fight went on. In some cases, things happen, like vehicles become disabled, people get hurt or people die. And I remember that those type of debriefings are helpful too, because that's just you need to hear that from your own leadership. And that's where I think, I don't know, just a lot of process for being able to move forward happens. I remember one instance that's maybe not so sad, but maybe just more helpful of when we didn't do a debriefing. Sometimes that happens when the cadence of things is so quickly. And there was a time where we're out on the highway, and our job was just drive up and down the highway in these tanks and try and have someone try and blow us up so they wouldn't blow up one of the weaker convoys. That's literally our job. We did it for a month. And we were going up and down the highway, and we see something in the middle of the road. It was just a tire. And we knew the very first thing they taught us before we left is don't stop next to tires because there's probably an IED in it or a bomb. And so it was right when we got into country. We had just gone up and down the stretch of road. It was really close to Abu Ghraib, that horrible prison, you know the story. And we stopped we see this tire and we stopped right in front of it. We're like, oh shit. and it blows up right in our face. And luckily, no one was hurt, but the vehicle was disabled. What happened was a piece of shrapnel cut through one of the hull, through the hull, and then just sliced this coolant line. So the damage, basically after that happened, we got out of the vehicle, we secured the perimeter. The person who triggered the IED was long gone, and there's never, usually a second one that's not going to happen within a few seconds. So we stayed there. We couldn't find out who did it, but we stayed there. And then we started working on the vehicle to see if we could get it driving again. And what we found, and the only alternative would be to tow it. So we really wanted to see if we could fix it. And so we saw what the damage that occurred from that blast. And it, just like I said before, it cut through a coolant line. And so in my mind, I was thinking, we can take another coolant line and fix this in a kind of a jerry-rig fashion. So I think I have a picture of it. I wish I could find it, but I think I took a picture of it. It's basically like we took two bigger coolant lines and cut them and put them around the busted one, and then put pipe clamps all up and down this whole thing. So it's something that I would never, ever, ever expect to even work, and somehow it worked. And we filled the coolant back up in the engine. The tank was rolling, and we got it back to base, to Camp Fallujah, where we're at. And once we got it back, I remember it was the second we got back onto the base, there was this thing called QRF, or Quick Reaction Force. Another part of our team had gotten into a fight elsewhere back on the road, so we were sent right back out. And I remember we didn't stop to debrief to talk about the thing that had just happened. Instead, we just went right back out. And maybe the reason we didn't do it because we didn't have time. But still, we in retrospect, we should have made time. And so we went back out, and I swear and this time is important. This time it was really, really important. We had friends who were in a fight, and we had to go and help them. And we got not even outside of the main gate, though. It was like this entry checkpoint thing. And that same vehicle that I had jerry-rigged to get back to base failed. And so the coolant line that I made broke. And I remember feeling like, oh my God, the whole time I was thinking please last, this thing will be fine. I had this fake confidence in this thing, but in reality, it was just good enough to get us back. And so what that meant was that we had to stop our vehicle. We couldn't go to help our friends. And another vehicle had to stay with us because we always had to be at least a minimum pairs of twos. And so what ended up going out was, instead of 4 tracks or 4 tanks going to help with that quick reaction force, just 2 went. And ultimately, that team was okay. The other 2 came in support, and that was fine. But I think the thing that made me feel really scared was that if the challenge, or if the fight was bigger than just those additional 2 tanks could have handled or been there to help, it would have been my fault that more people got hurt, or that someone got hurt. And so the lack of a retrospective in a situation like that was everything. If we had stopped, when we got back again, when everyone was back, we did have that retrospective. And the first thing that it was my staff sergeant said to me, it's why didn't you tell me that thing could only last for 5 more minutes? I had no idea how long that thing would last. What I wanted to do was I just didn't think it was important. And so that is absolutely a question he would have asked, knowing him, Staff Sergeant Stairs. He absolutely would have asked if we had taken 5 seconds to say, are we ready to go out? This last we just got blown up. We just got back. Now we're going to have to go back out again. If we'd taken 5 seconds to stop and talk about it, me being the more junior Marine, I would have said something if I was asked. But because I wasn't asked, I didn't say anything. And I thought that we didn't have a choice, basically, to go back out again. So actually, to going back to what you said in the beginning, you're right. That actually is something. It's that retrospective would have given me the opportunity to sound off, and to say, hey, I really don't think that this jerry-rigged coolant line is going to last, and I think this vehicle will be disabled. And instead, I didn't think that was an option. I thought we should just run this thing until it goes out. But ultimately, what we did was I took 1 tank out of the fight because I didn't have the understanding that that one would have to stay with us. We could have sent 3 and left that one broken one back. So yeah, I think that's.
Did you feel safe to speak up, to say something,
Yeah.
or was it just in the heat of the moment, maybe?
Yes, a little bit of the heat of the moment. I think that at that time we were still very new in country, and so what we were looking for was the senior Marines who had been in the invasion of Iraq a year prior, for them to have they're the ones who were calling the shots, basically. And I think that from my point of view, I just want to make sure that I was making as many things as available as possible. And I didn't realize that by taking a chance, you're actually taking a bigger chance. And so I felt free to speak up, but I think I felt pressured, or not pressured. I felt like that was the right thing to do. My lack of experience. It was just my lack of experience that is why I didn't speak out. But again, if I was asked, if we had stopped and looked at the craziness that just happened and then did an assessment of the vehicles and their readiness, it would have been a different story. It would have said something.
Who calls for debriefings? Is it the unit commanding officer? Could it be like someone in the unit that say, hey, should we have like a debriefing about this or that?
Yeah, I don't know who calls for it. I'm trying to. I mean, it's been a lot of years. My initial reaction is that it's just inherent. It's just like we would never come back from anything without talking for a minute and debriefing before people disperse. You know what I mean? And that was just I couldn't imagine that. So I think it's more just something that's ingrained. And I think the reason that it was so consistent is because when you become a leader in the Marines, it's a badge of honor. It's a pride thing, and that you would never ever want your people to just disperse and walk away after an event. It's not even. I don't think it's about control or anything like that. When you get leadership, I think it's just about making sure that your people see things. They understand things deeply. They see it the same way you do, and I mean that not in a like trying to make them see it the way you do, like just and no way else, but just keeping them positive and making sure that they walk away with the right motivation. I guess it kind of sounds weird, but. Cool. I love the connection that so when you sent that message, I was kind of blown back. I'm like, retrospectives and military debriefings. I'm like, that's a great topic. That is such a good topic. But yeah, man, the biggest thing that sticks out is that school circle at the end. You would never just disperse. Like you would never like bring all the tanks back, park them, and everybody just goes to their cot or something like that. It'd always be a discussion. Always. You know, to the question of like, is blame ever placed? Like things go wrong all the time. Someone made a mistake that caused, you know, a significant loss, something like that. I don't remember. I remember a lot of different debriefings. I don't remember a single one where someone was singled out. Like where that was the point of the debriefing, because I don't think that anyone in that scenario felt like it was a controllable thing. A lot of times, where if you're building software it's a really to fix a really challenging problem. Or something really aggressive for something that's never been done before, or if you're fighting in a war and you basically have a loss of life or something that you is really really hard to deal with. It was never seen as someone's fault. It was just that we were trying to do the best we could at the given time, and then things happen. Vehicles break, people get hurt, things happen. It's not always controllable, and I think. There's that like quote, I don't remember it very well, so I'll butcher it, but there's a quote that says like, everybody has a plan until the first shots are fired. And the reason that that's like so accurate, so important is because it's like, that's the honest truth. The second that things change and you realize you have to start to adapt, that plan goes out the window. It doesn't matter anymore. It's great that you planned. It was meaningful that you planned to be ready, but it may no longer be what you need to follow. At that point, you need to adjust or adapt, and if you want to overcome. So I think, the one nice part about debriefings and most communication in the Marine Corps was never placing blame. I think that in a lot of organizations, and particularly in the military, you have a really healthy group of people or unit if everybody feels accountable and likes the accountability and likes that type of pressure on them. I think that's a really healthy place to be. And so usually you'll have that person feels that way. But as a group, collectively, you're not trying to place blame. You're just trying to make sure that the next time something like that comes up, you have a better plan to get through it, or you have a better strategy. Anything that can help change the outcome to be what you want it to be for the next time, but never placing blame. That's absolutely like wasted time. That's how anyone would have looked at it. So
nice. Jon, thank you so much. This has been really fun.
You got it, man.
There's going to be a couple more episodes dedicated to war veterans giving their view on military debriefings and connections with retrospectives. Give us your feedback on Twitter with hashtag #ThisIsRetrospectiveFacilitation. And this is your host, Enrico Teotti. Until next time.